continue. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheikh Qasim. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Thank you for joining us and choosing to spend time on your Sunday with the Islamic Center of Southern California. For the last few weeks, we brought to you a series of Sunday program topics ahead of today's topic, and that is the election ballots. So we discussed justice in Islam as a foundation for Muslims to behave in a just manner, looking internally into ourselves and in our behaviors and speech. Then we discussed social justice in Islam and God's commands to us to look around us and uphold justice, even if it is against ourselves and loved ones. How we as Muslims have a responsibility to the community we live among. Then we had an interfaith conversation that discussed voting and civic engagement within the Abrahamic faith. We concluded that voting is not just a right and civic duty, but it is a religious duty. I have been approached by many asking which way to vote, sharing concerns about voter intimidation, and afraid of which way the election will go and what will happen the day of and after the election. I'm sure we all have concerns. What we hear and see on social media would make all of us anxious. But let's not worry about the things that are out of our control and leave voters' protection and the protection of the election process to the civic leadership. Let's focus on our part, and that is voting. Vote now and don't wait. All of us have already received our ballots with instructions where to drop off the ballots. If you're wondering and concerned, you can go to the nearest post office and drop it off. This still works and is still the safe way to cast your vote. Today marks the 16th day before election. Not that election hasn't started already. A quick note to share before I pass it on to our speakers today. I am proud to share that our youth, our MYG youth, they will be joining the National Phone Banking Day on November 1st to encourage everybody to go out and vote. I am so proud of them as the leadership of the Islamic Center is proud of our youth. And I encourage all those who are listening to find ways to volunteer and help ensure that everybody feels empowered so that they can go out and vote and ensure others are voting as well. I'm glad that Salam and Aziza are joining us. Asim has already introduced them. They're already our own Salam and Aziza, so no need for me to introduce them again. So I am happy to share that they will be having the discussion and conversation, and Aziza will actually introduce a couple of our young New Horizon Pasadena students to share in the discussion about the ballots. Again, thank you so much for joining, and I'll pass it on to Salam. Good to see you, Salam.
Thank you, Hidab. Good to see you as always. Thank you. Thank you, Asim, for always keeping the center moving, especially during this pandemic where we're all isolated, but it's nice to feel connected and as if we never left. So thank you for the work of the Islamic Center, its staff, and all the dedicated volunteers. And I think Hidab pretty much summed it in terms of this year's election. I know there's some concern about voter suppression and intimidation. Those instances will be rare. I think we have to just step back and realize that, yes, they will happen, but more than likely, all of us, inshallah, will vote without any incident. And as Hidab said, the easiest way to do it is just to drop it off in the mailbox now. But now we've gone from election day to election season. The voting is now spanning a matter of weeks, not just one day. So this will be a record turnout for the United States. And in the past, I always was amazed that you have countries like Lebanon and Iran and Pakistan, they have 70, 80% voter turnout. And then I look at the United States, it was 20 to 30% voter turnout. I go, you know, who's appreciating democracy here? Let's not take it for granted. So I think, you know, this time has forced us not to take our votes and our freedoms and our democracy for granted. So I think that's a good thing. And as the Quran says, sometimes you think there are bad things that are actually good for you. It's a good thing for us to go through this situation so that we do not take our democracy for granted. Secondly, as we've said at MPAC, it's really about our tax. Voting is about determining how we're going to use our tax dollars. If you pay taxes, you are part of the system. And therefore, it is our Islamic obligation to make sure that our tax dollars are used for the Islamic values of justice, of mercy, of compassion, of taking care of the needy, the underprivileged. We're all privileged, and our responsibility is to take care of those who are underprivileged. So I see that as an opportunity to fulfill these Islamic values and to strengthen our security, not just in terms of more military and policing and surveillance, but real security, like people's economic security, health security, food security, housing security, racial equality. These are actually issues involving security of human beings, of individuals, of civilians, not just the security of the state, which is important, but should not comprise the 100% of our security budget. And lastly, as was stated also before, this is going to be the most consequential election in US history in terms of where our country is going. And, you know, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was quoted to have said that his ummah will never go wrong, will never make a mistake in deciding on the affairs. And I think we have to take that into account, that even though we've seen so many wrong things recently and bad things, that we have to rely on the people to correct them. And this is an opportunity for self-correction in America and really value the relationships we have with other people. We're only 1%, but 1% can make all the difference in an election. So let's support the Get Out the Vote campaign, especially in swing states like Arizona, Nevada, Colorado, Kansas, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Ohio, maybe even Texas, who knows, Wisconsin, Michigan. There are plenty of Muslim votes to get out, and let's support those efforts to get the Muslim vote, especially in the swing states. And with that, I turn it over to Aziza.
Well said, Salam. I couldn't agree more. If you're paying taxes, you are definitely already part of the system, and I felt like you really framed things really well. Especially in the lead up to what it means for us to be voting on propositions and to know what we're actually voting on and to put our values into action as people who care about feeding the needy, making sure our kids are actually getting great educations in schools and figuring out how to survive this pandemic and the economic impacts. And so there's a lot of things on this ballot that are going to be really hard decisions. And right now, what we have in mind is for us to be able to wrestle through those things. And so to give you an idea of what we're doing, everyone should have one of these. The state of California made it remarkably easy for this election. It's like one of the easiest ones. You have up till today to make sure that you are registered. You could still even make it and still vote. But everything that we're going to go through today for the ballot propositions is in this leaflet. And if you don't have it, or you have misplaced it, because in my house things fly all over the place and then we don't find them, there's a PDF version. And so I'll make sure that at the end of this video call, on the Facebook chat, I'll make sure that all the links of anything that I reference is listed in the chat. And that way you have an idea. But the two students that we have from New Horizon Pasadena are remarkable leaders. They're individuals who have put in a huge amount of time to bring you greater insight on the pros and the opposition of the different propositions that you're going to be voting for. And everything that they say comes out of this right here. And before I give the introduction of the two students, I want to note, because Hidab and Salam brought this up, on page 5, you'll see that it says, there's something down here that says, "Where's my ballot?" It's on page 15. I have signed up for this. I'm tracking my ballot. I know exactly, well, now it's at my house. I'm about to send it in. And it will tell me exactly when it is received and where it is on the road. And so if you're worried or skeptical or anything like that, yes, you can put it in one of the voting centers, the boxes that are designated and listed here and on the websites. And you can also drop it off at your post office. So there's all sorts of ways that California is making it systematized, easier, safer for all of us to make sure that we're casting our votes. So with that, I want you to know who these two remarkable students are from New Horizon Pasadena. For me, this stands for something much bigger. As a community at the Islamic Center, we've invested in the Bureau of Islamic American Education. We've invested in these New Horizon schools and these students to hone in and build up their identity and support them coming into their own. And what's beautiful today is that we get to experience them investing back in us. These two young women have been the exemplar debate students at New Horizon. They have now they're now both alumna and on different roads, and they've invested a considerable amount of time into going into these propositions. So one of the women, she'll introduce herself, but her name is Rima Ravifar. She's an alumna. She was in 3 years of debate, and she won lots of different awards. She's currently a sophomore at Westridge, and she's interested in politics and wants to become the first woman governor and Muslim governor of the state of California. She has really big dreams, and she's putting them into action because she's currently working to volunteer as a leader in the Biden for Arizona and Mission for Arizona campaign, and is working on an education bill proposal that's striving to create social and emotional learning state advisory board. I do also want to say the Islamic Center is a nonpartisan and I also, for very important reasons, we're not taking positions on specific candidates, though we are bringing you the propositions. And I think it's important that we note that it's real that we have these young leaders and they're volunteering in these different campaigns, and we need people to be doing that, to put their work into action, their values into action. The second person is Diana Shadeva. She's also an NHS alumna. She was in debate and has won several awards. She's currently a sophomore at Temple City High School, and she's interested in speech and debate as a means to help her explore her different career paths as she's learning leaning towards law. So please give your full attention to Rima and Diana. And I want to express explicit appreciation for the leadership at New Horizon, from Ms. Rina Shah to Nahid Ansari and Amira El-Sarraf, who have all made this not only possible, but really are lifting our youth voices and helping them own themselves. So please listen in to Rima and Diana.
Record.
Assalamu alaikum, I'm Diana.
Assalamu alaikum, I'm Rima. And we are gonna go through the propositions in California. Prop 14 states that they authorize bonds continuing stem cell research. It is an initiative statute, and it was put on the ballot by petition signatures. So this proposition allows $5.5 billion in state bonds to be used for stem cell and other medical research, including the cost of training, research facility construction, and administrative costs. It also allocates $1.5 billion to brain-related diseases. So money from the general fund will be used for the repayment, and it also expands other related programs. The fiscal impact on California would be that it increases the state's cost to repay bond to an estimated $260 million per year over the next 30-ish years.
This builds on 2,900 medical discoveries, increases patient access and affordability, stimulates California's economy, ensures strict accountability. Doctors, Nobel Prize scientists, and over 70 leading patient organizations urged yes on Prop 14.
No on Prop 14 would commit $7.8 billion that we cannot afford during this economic and budget crisis. It also funds a state agency with management challenges and poor results after the $3 billion have already been spent. So servicing depths of Prop 14 could increase pressure for higher taxes or layoffs of nurse, first responders, and other public employees.
So what yes means? The state could sell $5.5 billion in general obligation bonds, primarily for stem cell research and the development of new medical treatments in California.
What does no mean? Voting no means that the state could not sell $5.5 billion in general obligation bonds, primarily for stem cell research and the development of new medical treatments in California.
Prop 15. This increases funding sources for public schools, community colleges, and local government services by changing tax assessment of commercial and industrial property. This is the initiative constitutional amendment. Taxes commercial and industrial properties based on current market value instead of purchase price, which is how they are currently. The fiscal impact would be increased property taxes on commercial properties worth more than $3 million, providing $6.5 billion to $11.5 billion in new funding to local governments and schools. Prop 15 is a fair and balanced reform that closes property tax loopholes, benefiting wealthy corporations, cuts taxes for small businesses, protects homeowners and renters, requires full transparency, and reclaims billions of dollars for schools and local communities, supported by nurses, teachers, small business owners, affordable housing advocates, and community organizations.
Against Prop 15 means that $12.5 billion of property tax increase that raises our cost of living and makes everything we buy, food, gas, utilities, daycare, and healthcare, more expensive. Prop 15 repeals taxpayer protection in Prop 13.
So what yes would mean? Property taxes on most commercial properties worth more than $3 million would go up in order to provide new funding to local governments and schools.
What a no vote means. Property taxes on commercial properties would stay the same. Local governments and schools would not get new funding. Prop 16 says it allows diversity as a factor in public employment, education, and contracting decisions. It is a legislative constitutional amendment, and it was put on the ballot by the legislator. Prop 16 allows government decision-making policies to consider race, sex, color, ethnicity, or national origin in order to address diversity by repealing constitutional provisions prohibiting such policies. The fiscal impact, there is no direct fiscal effect on state and local entities. The effect depends on the future choices of the state and local government entities and are highly uncertain.
The argument is that Prop 16 expands equal opportunity to all Californians, increasing access to fair wages, good jobs, and quality schools for everyone. Prop 16 fights wage discrimination and systemic racism, opening up opportunities for women and people of color. This is supported by League of Women Voters of California, California Federation of Teachers, Minority Business Consortium, and state higher education leaders.
The against argument, voting against Prop 16. Politicians want to strip our Constitution of its prohibition on discrimination and preferential treatment based on race, sex, color, ethnicity, or national origin. They want to play favorites. If there's anything that should be fundamental in our society, it's that the state should treat all Californians equally.
What yes would mean? State and local entities can consider race, sex, color, ethnicity, and national origin in public education, public employment, and public contracting to the extent allowed under federal and state law.
By voting no, you are saying that the current ban on the consideration of race, sex, color, ethnicity, and national origin in public education, public employment, and public contracting would remain in effect.
Prop 17 restores right to vote after completion of prison term. This is the legislative constitutional amendment. Prop 17 restores voting rights after completion of a prison term to people who were not allowed to vote while serving a prison term. The fiscal impact would be annual county costs, likely around hundreds of thousands of dollars statewide for voter registration and ballot materials, and one-time state costs, likely in the hundreds of thousands of dollars for voter registration cards and systems. The argument is that Prop 17 restores a citizen's right to vote after they finish their prison term, aligning California with other states. A recent Parole Commission report found that citizens who complete their prison terms and have their voting rights restored are less likely to commit future crimes.
Voting no on Proposition 17 because it amends California's constitution to grant violent criminals the right to vote before completing their sentence, including parole. It also allows criminals convicted of murder, rape, and child molestation to vote before paying their debt to society. Lastly, it denies justice to crime victims.
What yes would mean. People on state parole who are U.S. citizens, residents of California, and at least 18 years of age would be able to vote if they register to vote.
By voting no, people on state parole would continue to be unable to vote in California. Proposition 18 states, amends California Constitution to permit 17-year-olds to vote in primary and special elections if they will turn 18 by the next general election and be otherwise eligible to vote. It is a legislative constitutional amendment and was put on the ballot by the legislator. The fiscal impact is that it will increase statewide county costs, likely between several hundreds of thousands of dollars and $1 million every 2 years. It also will increase one-time costs to the state of hundreds of thousands of dollars.
The argument is that Proposition 18 will allow first-time voters to participate in a full election cycle, provided that they are 18 by the time of the general election. This measure is needed to boost youth civic engagement in our elections and help create more lifelong participants in the most fundamental process of democracy.
Against Prop 18, science and legal consistency demand a no vote on Proposition 18. Law prohibits younger teens from smoking, drinking, and even tanning because research shows the logic and reasoning area of their brains is not fully developed. Those abilities are vital to responsible voting. We must not lower the voting age.
What yes would mean. Eligible 17-year-olds who will be 18 years old by the time of the next general election may vote in the primary election and any special elections preceding the general election.
What voting no means. No one younger than 18 years of age may vote in any election.
Okay. Prop 19 changes certain property tax rules. This is the legislative constitutional amendment. This would allow homeowners who are over 55, disabled, or wildfire disaster victims to transfer primary residence's tax base to replacement residence, changes taxation of family property transfers, and it would establish fire protection services funds. The fiscal impact would be local governments could gain tens of millions of dollars of property tax revenue per year, probably growing over time to a few $100 million per year. Schools could receive similar property tax gains. The argument is that Prop 19 limits taxes on seniors, severely disabled homeowners, and wildfire victims, closes unfair tax loopholes used by wealthy out-of-state investors, and protects Prop 13 savings, joint disability rights, and senior housing advocates, firefighters, emergency medical responders, business and labor Democrats and Republicans.
The against argument. Proposition 19 is a $1 billion tax increase on families. It takes away one of the best tools parents have to help their children, the right enshrined in California's Constitution since 1986 to pass their home and other property on without any increase in property taxes.
What yes means. All homeowners who are over 55 or meet other qualifications would be eligible for property tax savings when they move. Only inherited properties used as primary homes or farms would be eligible for property tax savings.
What no means. Some homeowners who are over 55 or who meet other qualifications would continue to be eligible for property tax savings when they move. All inherited properties would continue to be eligible for property tax savings. Proposition 20 restricts parole for certain offenses currently considered to be nonviolent. It authorizes felony sentences for certain offenses currently treated only as misdemeanors. It is an initiative statute and was put on the ballot by petition signatures. Prop 2020 limits access to parole programs established for nonviolent offenders who have completed the full term of their primary offense by eliminating eligibility for certain offenses. The fiscal impact is that it increases in-state and local correctional, court, and law enforcement costs, likely in the tens of millions of dollars annually, depending on the implementation.
The argument is that Proposition 20 closes a loophole in the law that now allows convicted child molesters, sexual predators, and others convicted of violent crimes to be released from prison early. Proposition 20 also expands DNA collection to help solve rapes, murders, and other serious crimes, and strengthens sanctions against habitual thieves who steal repeatedly.
The against argument. Prop 20 is a prison spending scam. California already has severe and lengthy sentences, including life in prison, for serious and violent crimes. Prison special interests want to scare you into spending tens of millions on prisons, which could force cuts to rehabilitation, schools, mental health, and homelessness.
What yes would mean. People who commit certain theft-related crimes, such as repeated shoplifting, could receive increased penalties, such as longer jail terms. Additional factors would be considered for the state's process for releasing certain inmates from prison early. Law enforcement would be required to collect DNA samples from adults convicted of certain misdemeanors.
What voting no means. Penalties for people who commit certain theft-related crimes would not be increased. There would be no change to the state's process for releasing certain inmates from prison early. Law enforcement would continue to be required to collect DNA samples from adults only if they are arrested for felony or required to register as sex offenders or arsonists.
Prop 21 expands local government's authority to enact rent control on residential property. This is the initiative statute. This would allow local governments to establish rent control on residential properties over 15 years old. Local limits on rate increases may differ from statewide limits. The fiscal impact would be a potential reduction in state and local revenues in the high tens of millions of dollars per year over time. Depending on actions by local communities, revenue losses could be less or more. The argument is that Proposition 21 is the change we need to tackle homelessness. A yes vote on Proposition 21 is a vote to keep families in their homes. A strong coalition of elected leaders, affordable housing providers, and senior, veteran, and homeless advocates agree that Proposition 21 will help prevent homelessness.
The against argument is that Prop 21 will make California's housing crisis worse. Prop 21 undermines the strongest statewide rent control law in the nation, costs jobs, reduces home values, stops new housing from being built, and eliminates homeowner protections while providing no protection for renters, seniors, veterans, or the disabled.
What yes means. State law would allow cities and counties to apply more kinds of rent control to more properties than under current law.
What no means. State law would maintain current limits on rent control laws cities and counties can apply. Proposition 22 exempts app-based transportation and delivery companies from providing employee benefits to certain drivers. It is an initiative statute and put on the ballot by petition signatures. Prop 22 would classify app-based drivers as independent contractors instead of employees and provides independent contractor drivers other compensation unless certain criteria are met. The fiscal impact is minor, and there will only be a minor increase in state income taxes paid by rideshare and delivery company drivers and their investors.
The for argument is that app-based rideshare and delivery companies could hire drivers as independent contractors. Drivers could decide when, where, and how much to work, but would not get standard benefits and protections that businesses must provide employees.
The against argument is that app-based rideshare and delivery companies would have to hire drivers as employees if their court says that a rent state law must make drivers employees. Drivers would have less choice about when, where, and how much to work, but they would get standard benefits and protections that businesses must provide employees.
What yes means. Yes on 22 protects app-based drivers' choices to be independent contractors. By 4-to-1 margin, drivers support independence. It would save rideshare delivery service and hundreds of thousands of jobs. It would provide drivers new benefits, earnings guaranteed. It would strengthen public safety, and it's endorsed by an overwhelming majority of drivers, community, public safety, and small business groups.
What voting no means. No on 22 stops billion-dollar app companies like Uber, Lyft, and DoorDash from writing their own exemption to California law and profiting from it. 22 denies their drivers rights and safety protections they deserve: sick leave, health care, and unemployment. Companies profit. Exploited drivers lose rights and protections.
Prop 23. It establishes state requirements for kidney dialysis clinics, requires on-site medical profession. It's an initiative statute. It would require physician, nurse practitioners, or physician assistants on-site during dialysis treatments. Prohibits clinics from reducing services without state approval, and it prohibits clinics from refusing to treat patients based on payment source. The fiscal impact would be increased state and local government costs, likely in the low tens of millions of dollars annually. The for argument is that it combats poor hygiene in dialysis clinics by requiring infection reporting. It improves staffing, including requiring a doctor in clinics during treatment. It stops discrimination based on patients' insurance. It applies improvements to all clinics, whether in wealthy neighborhoods or poor, rural, Black, or brown communities. Patients, healthcare professionals, and veterans, faith leaders all agree.
The against argument is that the American Nurses Association of California, California Medical Association, patient advocates strongly urge no on 23. Prop 23 would force many community dialysis clinics to shut down, threatening the lives of 80,000 California patients who need dialysis to survive. Prop 23 increases healthcare costs by hundreds of millions annually, making our doctors shortage and ER overcrowding worse.
What yes means. Chronic dialysis clinics would be required to have a doctor on site during all patient treatment hours.
What no means. Chronic dialysis clinics would not be allowed to have a doctor on site during all patient treatment hours. Proposition 24 amends consumer privacy laws. It is an initiative statute put on the ballot by petition signatures. It allows consumers to prevent businesses from sharing personal information, correct inaccurate personal information, and limit businesses' use of sensitive personal information, including precise geolocation, race, ethnicity, and health information. It would also establish California Privacy Protection Agency. The fiscal impact is that it would increase annual state costs of at least $10 million, but it is unlikely to exceed low tens of millions of dollars to enforce the expanded consumer privacy laws. Some of those costs would be offsetted by penalties for violating these laws.
The for argument is that yes on Prop 24 would strengthen privacy rights. Parents, Common Sense Media, the California NNAACP, and a Nobel Prize winning economist say vote yes on Prop 24. It would make privacy laws stronger. It would protect kids online. It would strengthen privacy laws and hold corporations accountable when they violate your fundamental rights.
Against Prop 24. Prop 24 reduces your privacy rights in California. Prop 24 allows pay-for-privacy schemes, makes workers wait years to learn what confidential information employers collect on them, and makes it harder to stop tech giants from selling your information. Proposition 24 was written behind closed doors with input from social media corporations.
What yes means. Existing consumer data privacy laws and rights would be expanded. Businesses required to meet privacy requirements would change. A new state agency and the state's Department of Justice would share responsibility for overseeing and enforcing state consumer privacy laws.
What voting no means. Businesses would continue to be required to vote existing consumer data privacy laws. Consumers would continue to have existing data privacy rights. The state's Department of Justice would continue to oversee and enforce these laws.
Prop 25, the referendum on law that replaced money bail with system based on public safety and flight risk. It would be a law replacing money bail with a system based on public safety and flight risk. The fiscal impact is that it would have increased costs, possibly in mid-hundreds of millions of dollars annually for a new process for release from jail prior to trial. Decreased county jail costs, possibly in high tens of millions of dollars annually. The for argument is that yes on 25 replaces money bail with a fair, safer, and less costly process. Currently, if a person can afford to pay a bail bond company, they go free until trial. If they can't afford to pay, even if they're innocent, they stay in jail. That's blatant discrimination. Vote yes.
The against argument. Prop 25 was written by Sacramento politicians to take away every Californian's option to post bail and replaces this right with a new discriminatory system of computer-generated profiling administered by government bureaucrats, costing taxpayers hundreds of millions of dollars a year. Proposition 25 is unfair, unsafe, and costly.
What yes would mean. No one would pay bail to be released from jail before trial. Instead, people would either be released automatically or based on their assessed risk of committing another crime or not appearing in court if released. No one would be charged fees as a condition of release.
What voting no means. Some people would continue to pay bail to be released from jail before trial. Other people could continue to be released without paying bail. Fees may continue to be charged as a condition of release.
Beautiful. I think hopefully that gave you a good dive into the pros and the opposition to different ballot propositions. And I just want to echo and reaffirm my strong thank you to Rima and Deanna for their willingness to step up and to share really wonderful insight with us. Thank you for doing so much homework so that we could really start to wrestle with this. So what we have in mind now is for you to kind of join us in continuing to expand your journey of how to gain deeper insight. I see that there's some really great chatter on the Facebook comments. Please continue to add in. That's exactly why we're doing this. We want to see and wrestle with this content. And so if we're going to be able to do that, we need to all be chiming in and offering perspective, because that's ultimately how we're going to figure out, or how we can figure out where we need to land on these different things. And because some of these are really hard choices. So with that, I'm going to share my screen. So give me just a moment. Here we go. So you should be able to see now. So what you see here, I will again place into the Facebook feed. Something's going on with my glitches between Zoom and Facebook. So once this is wrapped up, I'll make sure I go into the comment section and make sure all of these links are available to everyone. So here is the voter election guide. It's what you have already received in the mail. And if you haven't or have lost yours, it's easy to find, and it'll be again in the comments. The second link that I want to make sure that you are fully aware of is the LA Times has some really great work that they've done. First off, I'm going to share 2 links with you. The first is the how to vote, because California is making it really easy, really intuitive. You have so many different options to make sure that your vote gets counted. There are other states in the nation that are actually purging people from rolls. And so you can read more about that, but in California, like, let's take advantage of this and make sure that we are stepping up to our responsibility as citizens. So this here is a very short 2-minute video. It talks about the changes and how California is making it easier for you to vote. It's in all sorts of different languages. You can see it's got Spanish, it's got Mandarin, it's got Korean, it's got Farsi, and you can just keep on going down. It's a really short video, and it'll just show you really easily where and how. The second link, that's LA Times, you could easily just go onto the LA Times website, but if you just search on YouTube, LA Times and propositions, you'll see a really short, again, sequence of videos that breaks down the propositions if you just want to think about it some more. And so they make it digestible. Sometimes when the guide that you get in the mail is remarkably dense and hard to understand sometimes, that you really have to focus. They actually break it down really simply. And that's why I want to make sure that you get that. The next link is actually a friend of mine, Maya Barron, goes through every year and she sees what different organizations are saying. And this gives you a sense of everything kind of in a matrix. That way you can kind of see where everyone is landing. The 2 that are not here, which I will also share links to, CARE and MPAC, also have released positions, and I'll make sure that you are able to dive into those individually, and I'll walk you through that in a moment. But what this matrix gives you is a sense of where these different organizations are actually standing. So if you see, like, Prop 15 has a lot of support from the ACLU, from the League of Women Voters, to different social justice entities, religious entities, etc. I believe CARE is in support of 15, MPAC is against. I think it's really important for you to go into the nuances on this one, because this is really about the way people who are in support of are framing this, is it's about schools and communities first. If you remember the protests and LAUSD paying teachers, and us talking about how important our education is, this is your opportunity to vote that way. And the opposition here is to say, all right, yes, we increase taxes on commercial property. And what does that mean for the small businesses? And I think there's some really compelling arguments here about weighing economy, weighing education. But, are we saying that education matters? Like, this is one that's going to be really hard, and it's really important to get into. Especially since this impacts our youth. And then Prop 16, restoring affirmative action, you'll see also the different folks. And then you'll see on 20, there's plenty of folks opposed, but you also see the Cal Chamber is in favor. So there's a lot to weigh here. This kind of gives you the matrix and the spreadsheet, and we can go into some more of those details. This is meant to be a form of support for you in trying to kind of dive into determining where you stand. The next link that I want to share is MPAC. So you can easily find this on MPAC's website. If you just go on the main page and then you search for California propositions, like it's like 3 clicks to get to this. And it's a really straightforward guide on specific ones. They don't have every single prop on here, but they'll give you where they stand and the why. And then, here we go. And then finally, the last link that I want to highlight is CARE California. So again, a couple of clicks here, you'll get the direct link in the chat. But here you'll basically see the different, so they're neutral on 14. They're doing a yes on 15. So if you take a look at 15 and you want to see more, it kind of gives you the overall of the why and the summary of the two. So, or of the summary of the prop and where they kind of stand and etc. So that's what I want to make sure that I'm sharing with you, because I think it's really essential to dive into this. It's not all 100% straightforward. And it's actually really important that we wrestle with these things before we submit our votes. And I hope that this has been really informative. Now is really your opportunity. Oh, before we transition into questions, is to say, if you have a guide, if you have, say, like the LA Times, they had a beautiful video series. It's like 2 minutes on each proposition, if not less. That's the kind of thing that I'll be sharing in the chat, and I'll share the rest of them. But if you have a link that you think the rest of us should be listening to, please offer it, because this is our opportunity to seek perspective. So with that, we would like to open up for questions. So I am both looking at Facebook so I can read your questions, and if you're in Zoom, we will hopefully be able to see your questions in the chat as well. So feel free to chat them. I am monitoring both chat on Facebook and on Zoom. And in the meantime, like somebody has actually put in LAist.com. Thank you, Nishat. Like that's perfect. That's exactly what we're looking for. Like, let's dive into perspective here. And we've got some good, so we've got some Halat El-Tarifi is saying, so 14 would hurt California, vote no. And please vote yes on 23. If dental hygiene cannot work without dentists on site, how will we allow nurses of dialysis to work without doctors on site? That's a really good question, and something to really consider and to ponder. So what else what questions do you have? Perhaps this is enough, but if you have any, especially guides or insights, please absolutely add them in. Beautiful, we're getting all sorts of support. Thank you. And I have to say, like, this is really one of those moments where I'm proud to be a NHS mom. There's, like all the New Horizons schools are doing a really remarkable job. And I feel like these two students from the Pasadena campus, these alumna, were really phenomenal. And if this doesn't get you to vote yes on 17, I will urge you to vote yes on 17, because I think that we've really invested in what it means to have young leaders, and they've really invested back in us. And I think there's really a solid opportunity here to make sure that our youth are voting. All right, somebody writes, Zubeida writes, please ask for a new ballot if you are given one with any marks scribbled on it and any other marks that okay, so you basically don't want to void out your vote. So absolutely, if your ballots have been tampered with, you can always ask for a new one. The state of California has made it so today's the last day when you can register, but you can always go into one of the locations where you can vote and register there, and then you have to vote in person. You just won't be able to do the absentee thing, but there's lots of opportunities here to get this right. Let's do that. All right, so since we have no other questions, I'm just going to continue to encourage you to affirm our young people, to wrestle with the content here, because there's some really big challenges here that are hard and that are important for us to wrestle with. Like the Quran says, وَجَادِلْهُمْ بِالَّتِي هِيَ أَحْسَنُ. Like really like what I love about like the propositions, like there's some really solid pro voices and against voices, and this is our time to really wrestle with things that are going to impact us. They're going to impact how we live, our taxes, the quality of education for our students, the quality of dialysis in our state, the ability of people to vote, and the ability of people to, wherever you stand on the bond issue, like if you are poor and you go to jail and you have to pay bond, you might have to be stuck in jail, but if you're rich, you actually can walk out just because you have the money. Again, I think that it's important to offer perspective here and to give each other the ability to build on arguments so that we can build just like a braid. Jadilhum, jadala. The root comes from to create a braid and to create different strands of arguments woven together so that we can come up with something much stronger. So thank you so much for your time. I hope you re-listen to Rima and Deanna again and again, and I hope you submit your ballot in the next few days so that we can get these counted early. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you for joining.